Welcome into the show today. Thank you for making this podcast a part of your day and for taking the time to watch and or listen. Appreciate you all. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, and that follow button on Apple or Spotify if that is where you are listening to this podcast, so it shows up in your feed 6 times a week, Monday through Saturday. All right. Lots to talk about on today's show. The NFL Combine is just getting rolling this week. You've got the coaches, the general manager, all of these important organizational people in Indianapolis. And it's a week where tampering happens, discussions happen that shouldn't be happening, and the NFL turns a blind eye. But on this show, I'm going to tell you and share with you Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's shocking comments at the NFL Combine. They're shocking, I tell you what. They are shocking. You are going to hear these comments and you're going to be like, whoa, our general manager said that? Are you flipping kidding me? But first, even Minnesota Vikings fans saw that Timberwolves game last night. Down 25 second half. Down 23 to start the fourth quarter. Anthony Edwards not playing in the fourth quarter at all and coming in for the final 2 minutes for overtime and having a game-saving block against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander-Walker, who is going to be the MVP of the NBA season. The Minnesota Timberwolves record moves to 32-27, tied with the Clippers for the 6th spot. So it's a big win. A couple of things come to mind during this game. The first thing that comes to mind, there's a lot of reaction to this game. My pastor, my boss, texted me at like 10:06. He said, best Wolves game of the year. So I'm like, what just happened? In my mind, before the game started, I thought, I should really put down $1,000 on this game. Because the Timberwolves are not going to beat the Thunder. There's no way that they do. Especially because they competed with them at Target Center. They almost beat them then. And they're the best team in the league. So the Thunder are going to dominate them because they're the cream of the crop at home the next day versus the Timberwolves. I didn't put any money on the game. Thought about it. Didn't do it. Minnesota, figure out your legalizing gambling thing. Maybe not, because I would have lost a lot of money if I did. So maybe I was saved by that. Anyway, my thought going into the game, Timberwolves going to get blown out. Of course, they're down 25-23 second half. And going into the fourth quarter without Anthony Edwards, game's over. Yet, some way, somehow, the Timberwolves come back to win. And my analysis is not about the game. My analysis is that how shocking it was that so many people watched that game. Best Timberwolves game of the year I saw on Twitter. From fans left and right. From my pastor watching the game. When the Timberwolves were down 16 with under 3 minutes to play. It's like, oh, why are you watching that game to begin with at 10 o'clock on a work night, school night, and people are watching the Timberwolves game? If it was me, I would have turned off that game with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Yet, all I saw and heard was Timberwolves fans' reaction following the Timberwolves win. So that was cool. At one point, the Thunder had a 99.9% chance to win. The Timberwolves came back with Jaden McDaniels, Rob Dillingham, Naz Reid, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Nickeil Alexander-Walker against the best team in the league. And this is why you don't get too high or too low after every game. The Timberwolves lose games that they should have won this year. Lost against the Wizards. But then they also defeated teams that they had no business beating. At the end of the day, it evens itself out. The Timberwolves were down by 16 against the Rockets with like 5 minutes to play a couple months ago. They came back and won. Timberwolves down 23 against the Thunder. Came back and won. It all evens itself out. You beat teams that you have no business beating. and you lose to teams you have no business losing to, because that's what happens during the course of an 82-game season. And that's what we saw on Monday night. Timberwolves versus Thunder. Okay, for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's shocking comments. They're being interviewed by the local and national media. Alec Lewis and Ben Gessling and the big boys are there covering this event because it's the NFL Combine. It's the next big thing after the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, what really happened? Somehow this podcast is still rolling, but it's definitely not NFL dominated at that point. There's a 2-week span there where it's like, wow, what is there even to talk about? There's nothing. So you got to kind of create topics in your own head. But Alec Lewis at the NFL Combine sent out a tweet and a quote from Kwesi about Sam Darnold. And here's the shocking comment that nobody could ever pull off except for Kwesi himself. We have options. Wait. Whoa. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah with the shocking comment of the year regarding Sam Darnold and his future with the Minnesota Vikings. Asked about where Darnold's going to end up, what the Vikings' plan is with Darnold, and the Minnesota Vikings do not tip their hand at all in their comments about Sam Darnold. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. We have options.
You kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. We have options.
Huh?
Really? We have options. That's what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said about Sam Darnold.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Is the most surprising comment of the year. But it really isn't. The Minnesota Vikings organization never gives media anything. They never give them anything. Last year, at the end of the year, it was their intention to re-sign Kirk Cousins. Of course it was their intention. But they knew the offer that they gave Kirk Cousins was not going to be the offer Kirk Cousins wanted. It was their intention to re-sign Kirk Cousins. If you know anything about the Minnesota Vikings organization and who's in charge, understand this. They never give a lick, a small sample taste. You know, when we go through Costco and they have a little sample in the hallways, in the intersections. Sample this cheese, sample these chips, sample this chips and dip, sample this meat. The Minnesota Vikings organization, they don't even give you samples. They don't even give you a slight taste of what is going to happen within that organization, which you could argue is a very good thing, because the last thing you want are players bitter, are players upset because you told the national media before you told the player. All the time you see it in the NBA. Oh, how did you find out you were traded? Oh, I saw a Woj tweet or a Shams tweet. The Minnesota or Adam Schefter tweet. The Minnesota Vikings organization are top of the line when it comes to what they reveal to the media, to the national media, and what they keep inside the organization. Kevin O'Connell also said this about Sam Darnold at the Combine. Sam is in a position where the NFL thinks he can play football at a very high level. Now, this makes you interested because his comment makes you wonder where the Minnesota Vikings are going to go with Sam Darnold. O'Connell has been more clear than anything over these last few weeks about where Darnold ranks. You know, talking about samples and trying to get a little taste. Kevin O'Connell might have gave us a little taste on Darnold. during his Super Bowl media tour, where all he's asking or answering are questions about where Darnold is going to end up next season. And he was very consistent with his comments and said, Sam Darnold has earned the right to be an NFL free agent quarterback, the marquee NFL free agent quarterback, which tells me that Sam Darnold is most likely moving on to another organization. And the Vikings want that cap space so that they can spend it on players that they desire deeply in free agency, because they have the cap space to do it. You don't want to bring in a Darnold who had one great year, but a past 6 years of failures and a meltdown in the final 2 games of the season when you're unsure of what his production is going to be next season and get all this cap space. It's a big risk. The Vikings have to answer the question, did they maximize Sam Darnold to their fullest extent? And it appears that the Minnesota Vikings believe that they did, based on Kevin O'Connell's comments these last 3 weeks. And the Vikings, they need to make a decision really, really quickly on Sam Darnold, because the verdict on Darnold needs to be figured out in the next 7 days if they are going to franchise tag Darnold, because the tag deadline closes in 1 week from today at 3 p.m. on March 4th. So the Vikings have 1 week to franchise tag Sam Darnold and make a decision on whether or not they feel like they can get a second or third round pick, or even a first round pick if they're lucky, for Sam Darnold's services from a quarterback hungry team like the Raiders, which everybody's talking about. And Raiders general manager John Spytek also talked at the NFL Combine, as pretty much did every NFL organization. And he talked about Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and Carter Bradley, the quarterbacks on the Raiders roster. And he said, we'll see if those guys are where we need to head to, or if we got to add to it, but we got to win more games. They're not enamored with their quarterback room. And they just brought on Tom Brady as a minority owner. So they're bringing in a different guy. That's the most obvious thing in the world, whether that's through the draft or free agency or sign and trade with the Vikings. The Raiders need to make a move. Now, is it for Sam Darnold? Are the Vikings going to take him to trade him? That's something that I'm going to talk about tomorrow or Friday. Because it's a big conversation that needs to be had. But this podcast was focused on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's shocking comments of, we have options. I wonder if the Vikings organization, Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, I wonder if they leave the podium, crack open a Bud Light or a Michelob Golden Light, and say, I wonder if they laugh, knowing that they gave the media absolutely nothing. I wonder if they have a good time together, laughing at their comments and discussing what they revealed, because it is the most obvious comment in the world that everybody knew, and that was nothing new. So anyway, this podcast was all about revealing Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's most obvious comment in the world. We have options. We have options. All right, thank you everyone for watching and for listening. If you made it this far, congratulations. Everyone have a great day, and thank you for making this podcast part of your day.